Light side, dark side. I think we can do something more interesting than that. Hey there, folks. Like the shirt? Got it for my birthday. If you missed getting me a present, there's always PayPal donations. Anyways, I wanted to do something light this week, especially considering what I ended up having to eat up time with last week. And we recently had the drop of the trailer for Star Wars The Acolyte. And between that and the fact that April 1st is coming up, no, I won't be releasing anything on the day, or at least I am not planning to. I thought it'd be fun for me to do a silly Star Wars one. Because if you're new around here, I'm kind of over Star Wars. Like, I've been very frustrated with it for a while. And not absolutely everything that has happened under Disney. No, I'm not one of those fans. Some of it has been good. I love Rogue One. I adore Andor. The second season of that is one of the few things I'm genuinely pumped for. I did like The Force Awakens. I didn't like The Last Jedi. Not for a lot of the reasons the loudest fans don't like it, but I thought it didn't pull together. I actually think its more interesting ideas were done far better by Andor later on down the line. And while I got some just cheesy fun out of Rise of Skywalker, it's not good. And then even going to the streaming stuff like Mandalorian, I did the first season and it was fine. It just didn't grab me all that much. I never got into the Clone Wars cartoon or Rebels, so all the animated continuations and stuff that's built off of that is built off stuff that I don't know that well. I did watch Book of Boba Fett. That started out almost interesting, and boy, that fell apart really hard because by the end, it was not even its own dang thing anymore. I didn't watch Ahsoka. I haven't seen the second season of Star Wars Visions because the first one annoyed me for a reason that we'll actually kind of touch on in a minute. But like overall, Star Wars, I'm just kind of like, how can I miss you when you won't go away? It kind of sums up most of my feelings at this point. The thing is, though, it doesn't have to be that way. Because ultimately, it's not every aspect of Star Wars that I am tired of. It's two things primarily. It's everything tying into specific stuff we already know. So like tying everything to the Skywalkers somehow, or just tying it all back to characters that we already met when this is supposed to be a massive galaxy. That's part of why stuff like Andor and Rogue One really interested me. Yes, there were some appearances by characters we know, but they were few and far between, and they were not the primary focus. So compare that to stuff like Solo, which is just like, okay, yeah, sure, why not? More than anything, even aside from like, this is a massive universe and you keep tying things back to the same handful of people, even setting that aside, I'm real bored of Jedi and Sith. I'm real tired of that. That was what I didn't like about the first season of Star Wars Visions. Granted, this was partially my own fault because I didn't look that much into it. I just knew it was all animated and it was all done by these different studios and directors. I'm like, oh, I'm excited. Like these anime takes on Star Wars, I did not know going in. And apparently if I'd looked into it, I might have realized this. But I didn't know that literally every single episode was going to in some way be a Jedi and or Sith story. And so about halfway through when I realized, despite all the different angles and options and possibilities, I'm gonna see a lightsaber get fired up eventually and I'm gonna check out. That's just kind of where I'm at. The thing is though, I like Star Wars and this universe is huge. It is a galaxy far, far away, a galaxy worth of adventure and interesting characters and settings and all this stuff that we could be doing. So this is not a super serious video. I'm being kind of facetious about this, and some of what I'm gonna suggest is not that serious a suggestion, but honestly, if any of this came out, I'd be more interested in checking it out than stuff like The Acolyte, to be honest about it. So, here's my pitch for 5 Star Wars shows, and these are specifically intended to be shows, I'm not pitching movies, that would actually get me interested in watching Star Wars again. First up, I want a show about a band. Not necessarily the Cantina band in specific from A New Hope, but that kind of gives you the idea. There's also one of the better, in my mind, or at least more interesting episodes of the first season of Star Wars Visions that just kind of started to touch on this. But like, I would love to see a show centered around a band going from location to location and occasionally getting higher end stuff, like getting to play, slower music at some imperial dignitaries, big showy how'd you do, but also then between the occasional gig like that, having to pay the bills by working dive bars like the Cantina on Tatooine and things like that. I think that you do this as a way to show us all these different locales and different species and different worlds and different layers of society. And you can just have a bunch of really fun music in it. And you can have all these dynamics between the band. Maybe a couple of them are dating, but then that's not always the stablest thing in the world. Maybe there's one member of the band who's like really good as a band member, but like doesn't really seem to get along with anybody. Does somebody have a drug problem? Are these kind of standard, band tropes? Yeah, a little bit, but think this is Spinal Tap crossed with the Blues Brothers in space. There we go. Next up, I kind of want to pick up on the lost potential of Book of Boba Fett, because what I found most interesting about that show was the underworld stuff. How the dynamics of the people who work outside the law are, the gangsters, the smugglers, the drug runners. This is what I want to focus on. Kind of like how Andor and Rogue One focus on the people dealing with the seedier side of the Rebel versus Empire battle. This is just going to deal with the seedy side of people who want nothing to do with that, but there's still plenty of seediness to go around. The elevator pitch would be Breaking Bad in Star Wars. I want these people power struggling for control of the smuggling corridors and access to things and moving the best stuff or making the best stuff or whatever it might be. And all these little internal power struggles for what is ultimately a slice of a very small pie when you compare it to the fact that the Empire could crush this entire thing at any moment. I think that'd be real fun. And that's probably the one with the most dramatic potential of what I'm pitching. Most of what I'm pitching kind of leans comedic. That one could be intense. Next up, pure comedy proposal on this one. I want an imperial bureaucracy comedy. Now, in my mind, this is sort of a lower decks thing. And I would honestly even kind of recommend it being animated, where it's just the drudgery of people who just work in the bowels of the imperial bureaucracy. They're not true believers. They're not people who are like really intensely committed with the imperial way of life. And they're not like, oh, rebel scum. Like, they don't care. They're just trying to get through the day, get a paycheck and go home. That's it. Maybe have a little time on the weekend to grab a glass of blue milk. That's all. That's all they're trying to do. But it's bureaucracy. It's a slog. There's red tape. There's absurd requirements. There's obnoxious coworkers. There's, the moon that had the base that I was helping design just got blown up. Okay, well, I guess I'll start that over. Or if you want something slightly more toned down, a little bit less overtly cartoonish, like Lower Decks, The Office. It's The Office in the depths of the imperial bureaucracy. I think that could be funny. And I know that kind of sounds like a sketch comedy pitch, and like, it could be, but you actually take the time to develop characters like the way something like The Office and Lower Decks actually does. Like, yes, the basic pitch feels like that could just be a sketch. Yeah, but you take the time to get to know the characters, it could be worth sticking around. Next up is about the only one that I'm also going to float a title for. Now, this is pod racing. Yeah, a pod racing show with the primary focus being the pit crew. We'll have the pod racer themselves, the driver, but like, they're kind of the jackass boss of the whole thing. Like, they're the face, they get all the glory, but there's all these people that have to like get this thing up and running and work on it and fix it every time it falls apart. And then maybe their driver gets completely crushed in a crash and like, okay, who wants to take over for that? And then eventually when the original driver soaks in a Bacta tank for long enough and shows up again, there's a power struggle between them and the new driver. There's lots of ways you could go, and you could have a mix of people who are like, they're, again, just there to do the job. You can have people who like used to be passionate about it, but they've kind of lost their passion for it. And now it's just a thing they do until they die. You can have people like still be excited for it and still get thrilled by it. And you can have the clash of personalities, and you can have the excitement of getting up in better results and getting into bigger races with bigger pots, and it starts to energize everybody. And you could build a season around that very easily. Okay, last one. And this is where I will throw a bone to the fact that, as sick as I am of Jedi and Sith, other people still like that stuff. And like, the lightsabers are iconic, fine. Let's do a wandering badass show. This is in many ways what Obi-Wan could have been, but wasn't really. But I want to take it to a further extreme. So I'm actually going to say a Jedi turned Sith turned I don't want any part of this whatsoever. So at one point of Jedi went over to the dark side for whatever reason. It could have been disillusionment with the power structure of the Jedi. It could have been the lure of power. But for whatever reason, once over on the Sith side, after a little while, realizing that this wasn't worth it. But realizing the bridges that were burned with the Jedi, well, I can't go back. And this is kind of crap. I'm done. Just walks away. I know some people bring up the notion of gray Jedi. I don't know if that's been canonized in anything that's still considered official canon. But I would be interested in somebody who just walks away from the entire dynamic. Not necessarily walks away from the Force as something that they are aware of and still influences them, but walking away from the Sith Jedi dynamic, like that whole dichotomy, that nonsense, I'm done. And they're just wandering about. They're going from planet to planet, just trying to maybe find some place where they could settle, but failing that, just keep moving, because what else are you going to do? Think the old show Kung Fu, or the TV show version of The Incredible Hulk. Wandering from place to place, not trying to cause trouble, not trying to get into it with anybody, but having the skill set to deal with things if things become unavoidable. If trouble pops up, and I'm going to say this is the kind of person that they're not devoid of conscience, but they're kind of annoyed that they have one. Like, their life would be so much easier if they just didn't care about people. And maybe they'll even proclaim that they don't. But then something happens, and they're like, fine. And they help, but they don't stay. So this is not like a Mandalorian thing of like, I'm supposed to be a detached badass, but now I'm stuck with this kid and I will stick with him forever. Like, no, I'll help you right now, but then I'm gone. Going from place to place, just trying to exist and trying to settle, but everything's a mess. So everywhere they go, there's trouble. And they have to fire up the lightsaber sooner or later because of something. And then out of annoyance that they had to do that, if nothing else, regardless of the situation, just the frustration, they're like, I still can't get away from this thing that I wish I could stop doing. And this place made me do it too, so I can't stay here and I got to go somewhere else. So those are my pitches. 5 show ideas and concepts for Star Wars that would get me actually interested again. Because when you show me something that's basically Sith versus Jedi, but it's 100 years further in the past, I don't really care. Picking up on this character from Clone Wars, like, I'm sure that's exciting for people who watched Clone Wars. Ooh, we'll do a little bit of stuff like with the Hutts and whatnot, but also here's the Mandalorian and a bunch of stuff again from the freaking cartoons that you may or may not have watched. Simplify. Bring it down to some basic elevator pitches, and then just massage that idea, build good characters into them, and have fun. A lot of Star Wars these days feels more obligatory than fun. It really felt like the Boba Fett show existed because, well, we established that the character's still alive. We got to do something. The Obi-Wan show felt like okay, we'll make it, stop asking. Not a ton of it has felt like passion. I'd lump Ahsoka in the same thing. Is a fan favorite character? Okay, fine, here you go. There is a lack of passion in a lot of these products. And all of these feel like something that an executive somewhere who knows a bit about Star Wars has a list of here's characters and things that we know the fans like. We should do shows about these, and then finding some poor sucker to do it. Give me the weird ideas. Give me the slightly out there ideas. Give me the pitch for something that all right, that might just be weird enough to work, as opposed to, well, we got to do that, because that's what too much of it feels like. But anyways, those are my ideas. Those are my thoughts. This was just meant to be light fun. I haven't had a light fun one in a while. Stuff has either felt heavy or has been a massive amount of work for me, including the one that's going to come out next week. That one has taken longer to put together than I wanted because this is a lot of work. But in any case, thank you for sticking with me through this. Whatever your thoughts are on these pitches, or if you have any of your own that you want to throw out there, because I have it on good authority, this channel is monitored by Lucasfilm, and maybe they'll pick up your pitch. Yeah, that's not true at all. But anyway, have fun. Whatever your thoughts are, drop them down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and helps me do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like, share, subscribe. Those all help. But don't worry too much about it. What I really want you to remember is that you are beautiful. You are valid, and you are loved. You are the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, may the Force be with you. Time for me to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Goddess Elida, Oliver B., Turok, The Thing That Goes Doink in the Anime, Ruth, Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris. It was a new one, that's why I paused. Melinda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernabi Likes the Poodle, Robin Powell, Twisted Wishes, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Pau Barabajoggle, and Mara G. If you want to support me as well and help keep these little buggers fed, check out my Patreon. Thanks so much.